Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection, review it, and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. The post-Silent Hill 4 years were challenging times for the Silent Hill franchise. Despite numerous attempts to capture the same magic as the originals, Silent Hill's sales were slowly plummeting with each subsequent title, with many gaining either middling or poor reception from fans and critics alike. We looked at one such title, Silent Hill Homecoming, just last year. However, within this sea of mediocrity, one title rose above it all, receiving a commendable amount of praise upon its release. As you may have guessed by the name of the video, that game is Silent Hill Shattered Memories, a title initially released solely for the Nintendo Wii in 2009, before being ported to the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation Portable. For this review, I'll be looking at the Wii version, as the game was clearly made with the Wii Remote and motion controls in mind. Let's find out exactly what made this game so special. Shine your flashlight, go to therapy, and let's turn the page to Silent Hill Shattered Memories for the Nintendo Wii. Shattered Memories originally began its life as Silent Hill Cold Heart. Cold Heart would have put us in the shoes of Jessica, a traumatized university student trapped within the frozen town of Silent Hill. The game reportedly had melee combat and puzzles, standard Silent Hill fare, as well as survival mechanics which would require the player to keep the body temperature up while scavenging for food. The game was also going to feature a psych profiling system, something which would carry over to Silent Hill Shattered Memories proper. However, the pitch for Cold Heart supposedly received a lot of corporate backlash and was revised, with really only the ice theme and psych profiling system carrying over to the title we would actually receive, Shattered Memories. Silent Hill Shattered Memories is actually a reimagining of the first Silent Hill, featuring much of the same characters and starting its story in an identical manner. However, though the returning characters share the same names, many of their roles and personalities have undergone significant changes, and the story begins to heavily deviate the further you progress. I personally have not played the original Silent Hill, so if you're hoping for a breakdown of the differences between Shattered Memories and the original, I'm afraid I'm not the best suited to do so. For this video, I'll be reviewing Shattered Memories purely on its own merits, not on how it compares to the original. On a cold winter's night in Silent Hill, writer Harry Mason crashes his car, falling unconscious. Upon waking up, his 7-year-old daughter, Cheryl, who supposedly was in the car with him during the crash, has gone missing. Worried for his daughter, Harry ventures into Silent Hill in hopes of finding her. Due to reports of a heavy snowstorm, the streets and buildings of Silent Hill are almost completely abandoned, save for a handful of people Harry meets on his journey. Meanwhile, many of the roads are sealed off by strangely large walls of snow. As Harry explores, it becomes clear that something isn't quite right. Harry returns home only to find a different family living in his house, who Harry is told has been living there for many years. Even more confusing, Harry learns of another girl named Cheryl Mason, but instead of his 7-year-old daughter, this Cheryl is a young adult. As Harry progressively comes closer to finding bits of the truth, an unknown force sends his consciousness to the Nightmare, a version of the town frozen over in ice, where he is hunted by bizarre creatures, the Raw Shocks. Interspliced between Harry's search, we occasionally switch into the first person, playing as an unknown individual who attends psychotherapy sessions, conducted by Dr. Michael Kaufman, seemingly disconnected from Harry's story. Here you'll participate in a variety of simple activities, which plays an integral part in how each player's experience will be shaped and ultimately changed. I'll be going into spoilers a bit later in this video, as much of this game's brilliance becomes more apparent the closer you get to the end. However, I think I can confidently say that Silent Hill Shattered Memories has my favorite story in the entire franchise, and yes, I have played Silent Hill 2. There is something to be said about how not like Silent Hill this story feels, missing a number of the series' staples like the Order, and lacking significantly in the sheer horror department. And yet that doesn't take away from just how fascinated I was with the narrative. The nightmare manifesting each time Harry almost reached the truth was frustrating, and I actually mean that in a very good way, as it got me to emphasize more with Harry's struggles. The game also attempts to tackle a variety of themes, including loss, grief, sex, and marriage, all with a strong sense of maturity, albeit maybe lacking a bit of nuance in some areas. Because Shattered Memories is so story-driven, it's difficult to talk about the narrative without outright explaining all the twists and turns. but just trust me when I say that Shattered Memories tells a story that is both touching and just so human. Graphically, I think it's evident that Shattered Memories is a phenomenal looking game, especially considering the hardware it was released on. The characters have so much detail and remarkably animated facial expressions. The environments are just as impressive, all lovingly put together with objects strewn about the various rooms, making these abandoned locations still feel lived in. The game also has a commendable lighting system, with each object hit by your flashlight casting its own shadow. There are some times where these shadows can look a bit wonky, not really casting themselves on a surface and looking like their own shadow entity instead. But for the most part, the lighting works beautifully. The only two real issues are that many objects, and especially shadows, have a lot of jagged edges to them. I recorded this footage on my Wii U, as I prefer to play the game authentically when possible, so I didn't have the ability to smooth out the edges using an emulator. And especially whenever you looked at an object close up, the jagged edges were incredibly noticeable, and just looked bad. I understand this is likely a sacrifice that needed to be made given the graphical intensity of everything else. Second, the game tries to get away with as few loading screens as possible to maintain immersion, so loading screens are often placed within opening doors. While it is impressive the speed at which Shattered Memories can load the next part of the world, the game does noticeably stutter when moving to another room, which can be a bit distracting. The gameplay of Shattered Memories can be divided into three styles: exploration, chase, and therapy sessions. During exploration, you'll be using the Wii Remote like a flashlight, as you navigate through the town and solve a handful of puzzles to progress. Unlike previous titles, the exploration segments here are fairly linear, usually railroading you to a handful of pathways, while almost every other door and road is blocked off to prevent you from going too far off the beaten path. There are a couple of alternative paths the player can take to find a few optional items. The first of these items is mementos. Mementos don't have any practical use, nor are they really all that interesting to look at. Their inclusion does add a little something to the ending, but finding these really isn't worth it and not something I cared about finding. The far more interesting collectible are the side stories. By taking photos of shadow figures or finding certain objects by following the flickering of your flashlight, Harry will be given either a text message he can read or a voice message, depicting bite-sized events of some of the past occurrences in Silent Hill. These side stories were interesting and played well into the overall themes of Shattered Memories. Sharper players can even use some of these stories as clues to the game's ending, but you won't be confused if you decide to skip them. They're exactly what extras should be, not being necessary, but adding additional flavor to enhance the experience. A neat aspect about the voice messages in particular is that to listen to them, you need to put the Wii Remote up to your ear as if it were actually Harry's phone, and the message will come out of the remote speaker. Those of you familiar with the remote speaker may recall that its sound quality wasn't amazing, and funnily enough, that's actually to the game's benefit. The lower quality of the speaker replicates static, making the phone call sound really creepy and heightening the atmosphere. That said, the sound for these messages only come from the phone's speaker, so if your remote is on the fritz, understanding the messages can be a challenge. To make matters worse, some of the puzzles that are mandatory to progress make use of this feature. I believe that turning on subtitles also gives subtitles for the messages, but there are some puzzles that require sound effects, and I'm not certain how much the subtitles give away, so keep that fact in mind. It's clear Harry's phone was one of Shattered Memories' biggest features, and the team obviously had a lot of fun making it work. Between the messages and camera, there's even a bunch of little posters scattered around with phone numbers. The player can call these numbers and get some flavor text. None of these messages are amazing or anything, but it's a little detail that helps with getting immersed in the setting, and in horror games, immersion is an important element. This can also be seen with the various puzzles and interactables, letting the player use the remote to shake cans, pop open locks, open cupboards, and more. When the Wii first released, everyone wanted to create a cool gimmick to make use of the motion controls, some of which worked and others that didn't. Shattered Memories controls work. This is because the game only asked for basic motions which the Wii sensor has an easier time registering. These small interactions with the world go a long way in getting the player engaged with the setting, without snapping the player out of the experience with wonky, unresponsive controls. As Harry continuously gets within arm's reach of the truth, he'll be transported into the nightmare, the entire town becoming encased in ice, and the raw shocks emerging from the shadows.
Welcome to hell, mother...
In these chase segments, Harry needs to run away from the Rorschachs as the area becomes a labyrinth of doors and hallways in order to find an exit. In my opinion, these chase sequences are where Shattered Memories stumbles a bit, and are easily the parts of the game I look forward to the least. First, the chase area can be difficult to navigate, with the blue ice making each room look identical to the last, and many doors causing you to loop the same places over and over. They don't start off so bad, but as you reach the latter half of the game, the areas become massive, leading to frustrating leaps of faith hoping you pick the right door. Harry's phone does have a GPS which shows the way you're supposed to be headed, but because, I'm being chased by monsters and trying to focus on where to go next, I could almost never bring up the phone, making this feature too difficult for me to practically use. Additionally, when a Rorschach gets close to Harry, they'll grab him, requiring the player to use the Wii Remote to shove them off. The issue here is that the Wii Remote also controls your flashlight and the direction Harry is both looking and running to. So after I shoved off a Rorschach, the shoving motion would naturally move my remote elsewhere and change where Harry was looking, causing me to start running in a direction I didn't intend to, and more often than not immediately end up running into another Rorschach. This is also where the stuttering when opening a door is at its absolute worst, with shockingly long freezes when going through a door. I just didn't find these segments fun in the slightest, only getting consistently more frustrating as they ramped up in difficulty. Perhaps the most unfortunate aspect of these segments is how it kills any ounce of fear and tension Shattered Memories could have had. The Rorschachs will only attack while in the nightmare, and they're the only enemies in the game. Once you realize that, the game isn't really scary anymore. While you're exploring Silent Hill, as long as you can see there's no ice, you'll know you're not going to be attacked, so there's no need to fear what hides around each corner. And it's not like the nightmare randomly occurs, they're scripted segments, so on repeat playthroughs they'll never catch you off guard. Now we are finally getting to the most exciting aspect of Shattered Memories, and what I consider to be the game's primary draw, the therapy sessions and psych profile system. When booting up the game, you'll get a bright red warning screen, informing the player that they'll be psychologically profiled as they play, boldly stating that the game plays you as much as you play it. The back of the box even says that Shattered Memories has adaptive gameplay, customizing the experience and forcing you to face your personal fears. Now, I'll be honest, the game does exaggerate quite a bit on this front, but that doesn't make the system any less cool. The therapy sessions can take the form of a variety of activities that psychologically profile the player depending on the choices they make. These range from a standard questionnaire, coloring, and thought experiments. Now, I'm something of an artist myself. I draw the avatar for my video thumbnails after all, so this'll be a snap.
A few moments later.
What is this, more trash? Better be a written apology. Let's see this. Oh, look how big you are. Oh, this is very nice. Hey, we gotta get this framed. Put up at the top of the fridge.
I don't want to give too much away, as the surprise of these sections is part of the fun, but to give you an idea what these can do, with the coloring activity, how you color in the drawing will change the color of the house and clothing of the characters in the next scene. Later, you're asked to arrange school subjects to make the perfect 4-period school day. Your choices of subjects will change what puzzles you need to complete at the school, each themed around the individual subjects. That's awesome. It's not just these therapy sessions that affect the game, however, as Shattered Memories also keeps track of what particular objects the player spends the most time looking at, and categorizes your personality in one of 4 personality types, which alter the world of Silent Hill. To give an early game example, one of the first characters you meet in Silent Hill is a police officer named Sybil. Having a more friendly personality will change the puzzle you need to complete before reaching Sybil, needing to hit a switch to unlock the door, while Sybil herself will be kind and dressed in casual police attire. Selecting answers that involve sex or staring at sexual images will change the puzzle to something a bit more skeevy, needing to unzip women's jackets to locate a key. Meanwhile, Sybil will look much more like a sexual parody of a cop, and the signs and decorum of the diner you meet her in will be changed. Being more aggressive won't affect the puzzle or diner, but Sybil will have a more complete, almost SWAT-like uniform, with her personality becoming significantly more antagonistic to Harry. These various alterations extend to the Rorschachs as well, as they'll start to twist and change into a variety of appearances depending on your personality, becoming increasingly deformed. Get it? Rorschach? Rorschach? Like a Rorschach test? Not bad, Silent Hill. Now, to hammer home why I love Silent Hill Shattered Memories so much, I'll need to get into spoilers. If anything I have said about the story has intrigued you, even a little bit, I strongly encourage you to skip to the timestamp on screen and play the game for yourself. The game loses a lot of its impact if you know the ending going in. Additionally, I'd like to make an important disclaimer. If you, the viewer, are mentally in a bad place or have difficulty with heavy themes of death and loss, I would urge you to skip to the timestamp as well. Your mental health is far more important than listening to me explain the ending of a video game. Otherwise, heading into spoilers in 3, 2, 1. As mentioned during my earlier synopsis, every time Harry is close to the truth, inches away from finally getting answers, he's dragged into the nightmare. However, after a long night, Harry finally makes it to where Cheryl is, the lighthouse. As Harry approaches it, we notice a sign which reads the Lighthouse Clinic, Dr. Kaufman MD Counseling and Family Therapy, and now things have finally started to fall into place. The unknown person we've been playing as during the therapy sessions? It's Cheryl. No longer a 7-year-old girl, but now a 25-year-old woman. And Harry, our hero trying to find her, isn't real. When Cheryl was 7, Harry and her mother Dahlia got divorced, going their separate ways. And sometime later, Harry got into a car crash where he tragically died. The loss of her father devastated Cheryl, as it would any child, and she questions whether it was her fault he died. Was she the reason her parents got a divorce? If it wasn't for her, maybe they would have stayed together, and by extension, Harry would never have crashed. Cheryl, unable to cope with the loss of her father, refuses to accept his death, creating a heroic manifestation of who she believed her father was in her mind. This is why the nightmare always took effect whenever Harry was close to the truth. It was Cheryl's way of denying her therapy, denying reality. And I think the most brilliant aspect of this was the details given to the Rorschachs. Knowing that the nightmare is all part of Cheryl's delusion, we can come to understand that the Rorschachs are agents of oppression, only trying to stop Harry so Cheryl can maintain hold of her fantasy. The Rorschachs never actually try and hurt Harry. They don't attack but rather jump and cling to Harry, as if embracing him. And when failing a nightmare, the Rorschachs affectionately stroke and caress him. The Rorschachs don't want to hurt you. Hell, in a way, the Rorschachs are trying to protect you. This fantasy version of you anyways. These bits of symbolism have always been when Silent Hill is at its best, and Shattered Memories is no different. It's a sad story that I think a lot of us can relate to, and I think the way it's told is just so brilliant. We, the players, want to help Cheryl, help her move on with her life, but to do that, it means truly accepting that her father is gone. And that's what I meant earlier when I said the narrative is so human. There are no cults, no supernatural forces at play. Just a simple but effective tale about grief and the ways it can affect someone, and I simply adore it for that. That ends the spoiler section. Really, the only thing left to talk about is the game's replay value, which is an area where Shattered Memories falters. Because the game is so focused on its story and the mystery as to what's going on, once you've seen the ending, there's not much reason to go back to it. The exploration segment's lack of tension from the absence of enemies may make these segments drag much more than they did the first time around, and the previously discussed collectibles aren't really worth going back for. The player may be encouraged to replay the game just to see some of the differences created by the psych profile. The game is pretty short, it's beatable in about 5 to 6 hours, so it won't take you long to replay the game and see new things, but I think the changes are too subtle to really warrant it. And that short runtime can make it challenging to recommend to anyone curious to give it a go, being far too expensive these days for how short of an experience you receive. At the time of this recording, the Wii version of Shattered Memories goes for a bit over $100 used, while the PlayStation 2 and PSP versions can range anywhere from $150 to $300 depending on the condition, with no other way of being able to play the game. Legitimately anyways. And that's understandably a very tough sell. But one thing I can say about Shattered Memories that I can't about many other games is that while it doesn't make me want to replay it, it does make me want to watch a bunch of other people play it. Seeing what choices they make and what little details are changed by those choices is really cool. And I think some of the therapy activities invite a lot of really interesting discussions to be had if you're with another person. And I think the game making me excited to watch other people experience it is nevertheless a testament to just how interesting both its story and mechanics are, which is definitely worth something. Shattered Memories is a truly unique game, and was a shining light of hope for Silent Hill during one of its darkest times. The psych mechanics are really clever, though a bit oversold, and outside of some awkward chase sequences, the motion controls are a boon for creating an immersive experience. Add the remarkable visuals, and you have yourself an excellent, albeit flawed, title for your Nintendo Wii. Shattered Memories will claim the number 15 spot in the ranking, beating out Ultimate Spider-Man. Despite its flaws, I love this game, and it's an easy recommendation for anyone interested in a strong narrative and themes. And there we have it, the final game of 2023. I do have one little extra video that I'm really hoping to release by the end of the year, which is gonna go over the ranking list so far, so that everyone knows where each game stands as we go into 2024. I also think it will be a helpful video for anyone new to the channel, and I think it's just good to do a recap at the end of the year. So please look forward to that. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and may we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.